best laid plans scrapped. We entered today expecting a third vote right around this time to try once again to give Jim Jordan the gavel. That vote is no longer happening. Now we are told that Jordan will get behind Plan D or E, or kind of lost track of the letters at this point, but sources are telling us that Jordan will back giving more power to a speaker placeholder, Patrick McHenry, and that will happen while the Ohio Republicans try to continue backroom dealing to get his way to the gavel over the next few months. Let's go straight to CNN's Manu Raju, who is all over this on Capitol Hill. Manu, what is the latest at this moment? Has Jim Jordan come out of this meeting, and has he formally, publicly said, I'm into this temporary plan?
He has said this behind closed doors. This is according to several of the members who have emerged here. But there are a number of fast-moving developments in this saga, that's GOP leadership crisis that has paralyzed the House for more than 2 weeks. There are some signs that perhaps this crisis temporarily can end. Jordan has indicated that he will back a plan to keep Patrick McHenry's interim speaker, empower him till January. They would need a resolution on the floor that could be voted on as soon as this afternoon to give him that power. But the catch here is that Jordan says he is not going to drop out of the race to be speaker. He said that he will still be the speaker designee, meaning he will try to become Speaker of the House eventually. It's January when Patrick McHenry's powers would run out under this resolution that the House could vote on today. Now, the House Republicans are badly divided over this resolution. Many of the hardliners oppose empowering Patrick McHenry, have come out and said very strong words against that idea. And some of the Republicans who oppose Jim Jordan's candidacy are strongly opposed for him staying in as a speaker designee. Several of them told me that Jordan needs to drop out altogether as they consider a new speaker candidate.
I hope he talks about a third vote and that he'll concede if he loses more votes.
I certainly will be advocating for temporary empowerment of the Speaker pro tem, allow the conference to decompress, reorganize, but most importantly, allow us to get back to work.
Is that a problem for you if he stays as speaker designee?
Depends how long. Yeah.
It says until January. It sounds like it's going to be until January.
Big problem.
So now the big question is how many Democrats will support that resolution to empower Patrick McHenry. It's expected to be introduced by Republican Congressman David Joyce, but given the divisions within the Republican ranks, Democratic votes will be absolutely essential. And at this moment, House Democrats are meeting behind closed doors to figure out their strategy. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, who I asked about this multiple times over the last day, had not yet taken a position yet, saying they needed to discuss this with their members. Some of their members want concessions from Republicans in order to support it. Other ones said we need to just get behind this in order to get the House moving and beyond this state of paralysis over the last couple of weeks. So a lot of questions here about how this will play out, what this means for Republicans going forward, and also what legislation could move under an interim speaker, Patrick McHenry. All huge issues as these fast-moving developments happen right now at this hour to try to unstick this paralyzed House.
Manu, before I let you go, I know that you're trying to talk to members as they leave this Republican meeting, but given how many you've spoken to, even just this morning, is it your sense that with Jordan backing this idea of giving McHenry this temporary power, that could help at the very least get a majority of Republicans on board with it? Or is it too soon because the Republican conference is just so divided?
It is too soon to tell, but I can tell you some of those people who are aligned with Jim Jordan on the hard right are strongly opposed to this idea, coming out and saying that they will absolutely not support it. And one Congressman, Jim Banks from Indiana, who's running for the Senate, told me that this would be the biggest FU to voters, if Republican voters, if they go along with it, showing just how much Republicans are concerned about it. Banks went on to call it a betrayal to Republican voters and predicted a minority of Republicans would vote for this on the floor of the House. So it just shows you the tension that is still lingering here more than 2 weeks after McCarthy's ouster.
Lingering and obviously growing. Manu, thank you so much for that reporting. Here with me in the studio to share their reporting, CNN's David Chaliand, CNN's Audie Cornish, and CNN's Jeff Zeleny. I mean, wow. We just heard it, the tone and the tenor from Manu's reporting. I spoke to somebody who has been around a lot of internal Republican battles in the House, who said that they have never seen it this toxic. Toxic is the word that this source used.
Undoubtedly, it's toxic. We've been seeing it's so toxic, it has caused our government to be in a state of paralysis for these many weeks now. Dana, your last question to Manu, I think, is so critical about this McHenry plan and if a majority of Republicans will come on board and if Jordan's backing it, brings a majority of Republicans. Because think about the tactics that Jordan and his allies have been using unsuccessfully to get Jim Jordan to be Speaker. That whole Republican echo chamber and getting Sean Hannity and firing up the grassroots. Well, you just heard what Manu was saying about Jim Banks. So I think we have to pay attention to, does that whole Republican echo chamber go along with what Jim Jordan wants to do here to preserve himself some time? Or do they rail against this notion of Republicans getting into bed with Democrats in some fashion to get government rolling again? Because you can see if they do, Jim Jordan just endorsing it may not be sufficient here if the grassroots get really riled up as thinking that this is somehow giving up what is about winning the majority, what winning the majority is all about for them.
And Audie,
can I add something to what he
yes,
just
and
said?
as you do, I just want to underscore that people tuning in might go, okay, whatever, it must be a day that ends in Y. There's dysfunction in Washington. This is different. This is different because there is no Speaker of the House for more than 2 weeks. And please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was going to say where Jordan probably miscalculated is he's not as scary as Trump and he doesn't carry any other powers. He doesn't fundraise for anyone and no legislation he's ever introduced has become law, which means he literally has no experience in getting people to do anything. And I think that assuming that he could somehow use the media in a moment when the media is deeply preoccupied with a war was a huge miscalculation. People are paying attention to Hamas as terrorists. They're paying attention to what Biden is saying. There's lots of concerns about Iran. I think it was far harder for them to break through in this news cycle, and no one cares that much about who is Speaker. What they do see is how long it's taking them to do something that is extremely basic.
And another extremely basic.
Yeah, but since January, right? Like,
yeah.
So instead of just being like, oh, voters won't care about that by next year, the defining thing about your entire majority will have been this.
Without a doubt. I mean, you've heard member after member after member say that they do believe their majority is threatened. But I mean, set aside that for a second and also set aside the idea of Jim Jordan trying to become Speaker at some point down the road. I mean, that is very much an open question. It's hard for me to even imagine that happening. As David was saying, if the grassroots is even a fraction as angry as Manu was suggesting, that the FU language there, he'll have a hard time doing this. But I think the bigger point here is, what is Hakeem Jeffries going to do? What are Democrats going to do? Are they going to essentially bail them out? My sense is probably yes, because this has gone on so long. And there is a worry among some Democrats I speak to, members and others, about, while they didn't cause any of this, it certainly has seeped into the atmosphere that they did not sort of help Kevin McCarthy. Every time Kevin McCarthy speaks about this, he blames Democrats. And of course, it's not the Democrats' fault, but this is a moment when they can help out. So I think the burden is on them as well. So what he decides this afternoon is also important to Democrats, showing that they too can govern. Will the White House get involved? We're not sure. This is moving very quickly. But that's something to keep an eye on.
You know,
as well.
that's such an important point. David, I spoke just before coming on with a House Democrat who was talking about, my question was, how many Democrats are going to cross party lines? And again, this is not to vote for a Republican speaker. This is just to give the temporary speaker powers to help the nation govern. And the answer was, I know, just a small thing like helping the nation govern. The answer was that, similar to what you just said, which is that just on the raw politics of it, at first this was, look, Republicans can't govern. But as this goes on for a while, it does seep into Democratic territory, whether they like it or not, whether it's fair or not. It's just, people are just frustrated. So it potentially would help Democrats to look like the cavalry is coming in.
Which is why I think you've seen Hakeem Jeffries do what he's been doing over the last couple of weeks, which is saying, my door is open to engage in some kind of negotiation here, not to just wall it off. I interviewed this morning the chairwoman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, who's in charge of winning back the House for Democrats this cycle. And I asked her specifically, what is it you would be looking for? And she just kept saying, oh, no, we're open. We're just waiting for the Republicans to engage. Well, clearly Republicans are going to engage now. And one thing she said, to the concessions point, Jeff, this is Congresswoman Susan Del Bene of Washington, she said, We want bipartisan legislation to be brought to the floor under this Speaker McHenry. That's what we want to see, and we need to trust that they're willing to do that, not just pursue a Republican-only agenda. That, in a majority rule situation like the House, that's kind of unheard of.